Well, welcome everybody. It's good to have you on our year-end virtual members meeting. You all know me, Salman Golistan. I'm the chair of the members and one of the directors on the board of directors. We wanted to take the time today for any new members, first to go over the basics of membership very quickly. For the returning members, some of this will be familiar about your rights and responsibilities, the privileges and benefits of membership. And then to provide an update on what the center has been doing this year, a year in review 2020. Of course, this has been a very hard year, not only for the center, but for many nonprofits and for many families and folks in our country and across the globe, given the nature of the ongoing pandemic. But we wanted to let you know about some of the great things that we've been able to do, even during this tough time in 2020. And then finally, a look forward, where we're at now and what we are hoping to do in 2021, including our scouting and searching for a new center, a new home where we can, post-pandemic, where we will be able to congregate and celebrate and enrich our lives and the lives of our community members once again in person, and we're all looking forward to that. So without just a few ground rules, of course, if anybody has any questions, as usual in these virtual meetings, please go ahead. You can see a Q&A box or a chat box. It's easier if you go ahead and just type your question, any question you might have relating to the material as we're going over it or discussing. And if I can answer them as I go, I will try. Otherwise, I will likely save the questions to the end, at the end of each segment. And of course, we've thought of some frequently asked questions as well, and I'll discuss some of those at the end of questions that you or others might have. So without further ado, let's get right into the nuts and bolts for some of our new folks of membership. So obviously, membership in the Iranian American Society of Arizona is governed by our bylaws. Bylaws are the rules and procedures that govern the entity, but also govern all of the board of directors, the members, and the operations. We did hire an outside attorney to draft these. She is a specialist in nonprofit and governance, and we did take her recommendations. The article in the bylaws that govern membership is Article 2. Sections 1 through 15. Article 2, Section 4 lays out minimum membership requirements. Obviously, to become a member, one has to submit an application. The member has to adhere to the AZPCC member handbook that includes policies and procedures. Obviously, the member has to agree to support our mission, the center's mission and purposes. And other requirements that are set out in the handbook include 18 years of age, a lawful resident or alien, resident alien of the United States, and of course, an interest in Iranian and Persian culture and heritage. The center offers different types of memberships. There are 3 different tiers: silver, gold, and platinum. Each tier provides certain benefits, particularly certain kinds of discounts. For example, silver gets 10% discounts on all paid and events that are sponsored or originated and organized by the center, with the exclusion of the gala. All members will receive access to publications, including newsletters and special events, potentially monthly raffles. Gold members and the dues for silver level are $120 a year for individuals or $200 a year for family. And I believe we have recently made some tweaks to, I'll cover those at the end. Some additional tweaks we made during the pandemic for our members, so to get additional value. But the next level, gold, the discount percentage for gold membership is 20%. And then again, there is different pricing for an individual versus a family of up to 4. And platinum members are entitled to 30% discount on all paid events organized or sponsored by us, except for the gala, in addition to all of the gold benefits. So at each level you go up, you get some additional benefits, and that includes all of the benefits of the prior level. And I think this is a good time just to note, obviously this year during the pandemic, our membership, before the pandemic, we were trending we were about to hit 200 members once the pandemic hit in early March, and we had to wind down our in-person operations. Our membership numbers have dwindled. And given all of the difficulties and all of the events and various things that we've had to really reorganize and evaluate how we do our programming, which has mostly been online, you'll hear, of course, that now more than ever, membership is very, very important to our organization. And we are still working very hard to get you quality programming, interesting programming, thought-provoking programming, to keep our community alive and that sense of connectedness alive, even though many of us are having a really hard time with what's been going on. So as of now, during the pandemic, we've dwindled a little bit, down to probably 140 members approximately. We're hoping, of course, post-pandemic to bring that number back up, and hopefully, as you folks are able to see the benefits that you're receiving even during the pandemic from all of our virtual programming, to continue to strengthen our membership. So we have various member obligations that's governed in bylaws, Article 2, Section 2. That member, of course, shall be an individual interested in Iranian culture, shall pay all timely dues and assessments, shall attend member meetings and participate on committees as appropriate, shall attend and promote the center events, and of course shall work to further the purpose of ISAZ and the center. Now, membership, of course, comes with a number of rights. That's under the bylaws, Article Section 2. The members can submit proposed agenda items for the board of directors, can request to attend a meeting of the board of directors, can nominate self or others through the formal channel of nomination. And of course, the members have a right to make motions and vote on motions made that are submitted to the board for consideration. Those things could be such as amending bylaws, nominating candidates for the board, creating committees, researching, reviewing, or planning for events. And that's the official process. Obviously, when we have a vote of the majority of the members for any of these things, that carries a great weight. That being said, our door is always open. We're always looking for ideas, folks who are looking to get involved, individuals who might be interested in a board position or officer position. We do take those considerations, and we do take those recommendations, and we do take them seriously and review them. So, of course, participation is always encouraged, and we are heartened when we do see folks, stepping up, whether it's a volunteer position or an officer position, in any capacity. We love it for our community to be involved. So that's the formal channel and the formal rights. And again, we can talk about some of the informal channels later. Probably perhaps one of the most important is your right to vote as a member. That's in Article 2, Section 10. Votes formally happen only at meetings, and they can only happen in person. So, and that's per the bylaws. So in these sessions, we have information updates, we can take questions, we have conversations, but a formal vote can happen only in person. There's no remote, online, or proxy voting, and each member gets only one vote. In order to exercise those rights and responsibilities, of course, the member has to be in good standing. That's found in Article 2, Section 6. Article 2, Section 15 covers things like voluntary resignation, termination, those kinds of things. Thankfully, we haven't had to deal with too much of those types of issues, but all of that, both on the front end and the back end, that's spelled out there in Article 2, Section 6 for the good standing requirements, and then Section 15 for the resignation type requirements. For these meetings, our members' meetings, Article 2, Section 8, of course, only members can attend. Members can request guests to attend, but that request has to be submitted to me as the director, as the membership director, or as the chair rather, or director, prior to the meeting. Guests, of course, have to be approved, and the guests would not be allowed if we were in person, and we did do this informational update. And we did transition then to an in-person voting session, assuming a majority was present and a quorum was present. The guests would not be allowed in that executive voting session. We have regular meetings. Typically, we held them quarterly. We did hold them a few times in person, once last year, once or twice earlier this year before the pandemic. We will probably move to resume a quarterly schedule next year. The bylaws requires at least a minimum of one member meeting annually, one regular member meeting annually. Special meetings can be called for special purposes. There are certain notices and content requirements that need to be met, and that's all again found in the bylaws. A typical member meeting structure would be the non-business portion. This would be kind of something like what we're doing now, right? If there's a review of minutes from a prior meeting, recent events, announcements, presentations by others who might be involved, or folks who might have updates about upcoming events, presentation by the volunteers, any other issues. And then, as I mentioned, it would be the formal business portion of the membership, of the members meeting. That's when the voting happens. That requires a quorum. That means over 50% of the members. And we would review any proposed written submitted motions. And if any members have written motions to submit, that has to be done. It can be done by email. That can be done electronically, but it needs to be in writing, submitted 2 weeks prior, such that when we send out the notice of that meeting, those agenda items, those formally proposed items, the motions for a vote, whatever those might be, will be included in that agenda. Once we do get to the formal voting in the business portion, we're going to use a lot of rules of parliamentary procedure. It's called the Robert Rules of Order. The chair will recognize speakers and process motions. We'll take formal seconds for discussion to open. First person will propose, the second person will second, and then there will be discussion and debate on that motion. And then at some point, either there'll be a vote on that motion, or there'll be a motion to postpone or table or consider that at a later time. And of course, when we get to that phase, obviously decorum really matters. Make sure we're listening to each other. Focus on issues and not personalities. Avoid questioning intentions and motives. We have different opinions, and that's okay. But I'm sure we all want what's best for our community and for our center. And of course, be polite. Some basic rules of the road. So typically, as I said, we would have these member meetings quarterly, usually on Saturdays, almost always on Saturdays, typically from 3 to 5. We don't have a meeting date for 2021 yet, but as soon as we do, of course, that can be found on our calendar of events. And of course, emails will be sent out in advance of the meeting. So those are a brief review of the nuts and bolts of the rights and benefits and privileges of membership. If you have any questions, of course, we can talk about that at a later time. If you want to look at the bylaws or the membership manual, all of that information is available on our website. And you can navigate to that and look for that information and find it relatively easily, download it, read it at your leisure, and we can review it and discuss it at a future time. So I want to transition now and discuss the year in review, our 2020 year in review. It's like I said originally, it's been a tough year for a lot of folks. It's been a tough year for the center and for many, many people. We did hold 84 live events until we closed on March 11th. Probably the largest one of those, a very popular and well-attended New Year's festival event. That was prior to the official declaration that this was a pandemic. And of course, once that happened, the center responded very quickly, and we closed down, as many other places did. But that doesn't mean we stopped working for our community and stopped putting together very thought-provoking, interesting programming of all different kinds, educational programming, instructional programming, cultural programming, as much as we could possibly do on a whole wide variety of topics. Since that time, we've held at least 278 online events from March until now. And a large focus of ours after March 11th was helping and assisting those families and those individuals who have been really affected by COVID. We have created what we call the Help Fund. And in that fund, we have raised approximately $26,975 from March until now. And of that, $23,014 has been distributed. And those funds have gone directly to families in need, 304 families in need who have been hit hard by COVID, whether it be rent, job, health issues. And we've been able to help a lot of people who really needed it. And that's a very big deal. We will be continuing that program, of course, as needed on a go-forward basis. This year, given the drastic nature of the situation of how our limitation on in-person events, of course, that has affected membership, that has affected fundraising. So the center has had to get creative. I mean, we've looked at all possible avenues for funding, so we can continue our operations even virtually, because we do still have a lot of expenses, even though we are operating virtually. A lot of overhead and a lot of expenses still exist and have existed because we have had that center the whole time. But in looking for new sources of funding and grants, particularly during the era of COVID, that are limited grants that have been earmarked for nonprofit organizations, we did receive grants from 4 nonprofit centers for approximately $23,440. Those funds were used to cover things that would include operations, rent, internet, phone, utilities, those kinds of things, IT, our virtual technology, our subscriptions to Zoom and some of these other platforms that we use to continue to bring events to you and to our community. And of that, approximately $3,500 was also distributed directly as a part of the HELP program, the HELP program, to those COVID affected families. So in sum, it's been a tough year, but we have managed to persevere. We've gotten creative, like many folks have, and we have continued to bring high quality, wonderful programming, both from folks within our community and from folks from outside the community who've come to lecture on various topics, and enlighten us and educate us in some very interesting ways. And so, and looking forward to 2021, we do have one of the things that we are looking forward to, that the center is looking forward to, is the search for a new center. It was a very tough decision, but it was not a decision the board made lightly. The board, it had always been a part of the vision, of course, that our original center would be a home, but not a permanent home. And I think in taking into account some of these difficulties with COVID, taking into account some of the other items that we've talked about, the board thought it was the right time to look for a new center. And so to that end, a 4-person committee was formed in August with the goal of searching for and securing the new center. Our committee members include Mr. Mark Tahiri, Mohammad Tabatebi, Khanam Fariba Ansari, and Mr. Nick Eskandari. They have been working very hard and diligently to search for a new center that really will fit our need and our growth in the future. Ideally, and these are the metrics and the goals, first of all, a location with between 3,500 and 4,000 square feet with at least 3 to 4 rooms that are suitable for small and large events, and potentially having multiple events. We were fortunate enough before the pandemic to get to the time where our calendars were very full and events were running close behind one another. and sometimes limited space and capacity became an issue. Again, we were fortunate enough to have that issue. So with that in mind, moving forward, we want to find some place that's centrally located. And these are the zip codes under consideration by the committee: 85251, 85257, 85008, or 85018. And the maximum monthly lease, the absolute ceiling that we've set in our search, is $3,500 a month. And that's in progress. That's a work in progress. That's ongoing. The committee has reviewed 3 properties so far to date, but has not found anything that really meets all of those metrics. And so the search will continue into 2021 and beyond. And I think, let's see now if we have any questions. I don't see any questions. I've come up with an FAQ of sorts, some frequently asked questions that I'll read through in the interim, and see if any other questions come in the meantime. However, some questions that we've heard, when we were talking about our search for the new center before, back when it was more of a theory. Now we've of course put that into practice. One question we received a few times is, why don't we buy the next center? Why do we have to rent a space or lease a space? Why don't we buy a spot outright? And the answer to that, frankly, is we just don't have enough funds to do that. The cost of such an endeavor would be $1 million or more, and we're not in a place to be able to do that. Is there a goal for opening the next center? Yes, we do have a timeline and a goal. Of course, that's going to be based on conditions, on the ground and in our communities. As things evolve, we will be following that, and the recommendations of health officials might evolve. We'll be following that. But our goal as of now is Q4 of next year. So Q4 2021, meaning the last 3 months of 2021, October, November, December timeframe. What are some leadership areas that the board or the organization itself overall needs help with? We have various officer positions that are open: art director, social media director, public affairs. So we're always looking for folks who are interested to get involved. Of course, in terms of, and this is another thing we covered, but how does one become a board member? Well, one can, of course, nominate a colleague or a friend or a family member, or even themselves, informally. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, and we talked before, there is the formal route where the members come and make a vote and formally nominate somebody. But on an individual level, we will still hear folks out, and if there's a recommendation, and we receive information about the candidate and their qualifications, then those are things we would consider. So if you want to know more about the formal process, of course, please take a look at the bylaws and the members manual, and that will sort of lay out some of those. And so beyond that, that kind of addresses some of the hot topics and questions that we've seen recently from our membership. That about wraps up, from our perspective, the information that we wanted to share with the members about what we've done this year and where we are going to be going in the future as we search for a new center. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. I'll look in the chat or the Q&A box. I don't see any questions, but if anybody has any, I'm happy to answer them as best as I can. And I should say, of course, thank you for taking the time on this Saturday to come be with us virtually to get the updates and the latest news. Appreciate that. I'll give it a few minutes, see if anybody has any questions before we formally wrap up. The members, if you came in late or you missed something or you weren't sure, well, I'll probably do a summary of what we've discussed here and what I presented here, and sort of send out that update. Make sure that folks have the end of the year update and the look forward into next year, and then in the new center search as well. So please be on the lookout. Take a look at your emails. Well, I don't see any questions or questions about what we talked about today. Of course, if there are questions or suggestions, our doors and our inboxes, I should say, in this virtual world, our inboxes and our phones are always open and on the line. You can absolutely email us at info at iasaz.org. We'll be sure to review any comments, suggestions, questions you might have. We're always looking, of course, for ideas for online events. We've come up, often a community member will tell us that they know somebody who has an interesting background or an interesting area of knowledge to come and talk, provide some kind of lecture. We've done that a number of times based off of suggestions from members and suggestions from folks in our community or folks that they might know. So please, if you have any ideas for online events or virtual events, we are happy to have them. And again, that's info at iasaz.org. With that, seeing no other questions, I'll say thanks to everybody for taking the time to come out. Hopefully this was informative for you, both the nuts and bolts section and the 2020 update and the outlook for 2021. And we are looking forward to continuing these meetings, and hopefully we can resume them in an in-person basis in our new center next year. Thank you, everyone. Take care.